Okay, quick video on communicable diseases in biology paper 1. So it starts off with just general definitions, looking about how diseases are caused and then how they are spread, which we'll talk about in a second, and then how they cause disease. So the different ways that bacteria and viruses cause disease in terms of their pathogenesis. Then focusing specifically on the main diseases you need to know. So although there are obviously millions of communicable diseases you could comment upon, the aim really is if they're asking a question in the exam, you're focusing on measles, HIV, tobacco mosaic virus, salmonella, gonorrhea, rose black spot, and malaria. So these will be the ones I'll focus on. Application questions can link to these, but ultimately it's all related to either the symptoms, the effects, the treatment for these as well. So as I say, the main focus really then for this just short video is to look at the different types of diseases, focusing predominantly on their effect, the symptoms, and then how they can be treated. As I said, this bit's important really in terms of the treatment because they could get you to apply your knowledge to another type of pathogen. And ultimately, it's just it's just linking that to the previous diseases. Okay, so first of all, general disease. So a disease can be defined as an abnormal or unhealthy effect on your well-being, your physical or mental health. In particular, this part of the specifications focusing on communicable diseases. Two parts then, so two key parts. First of all, these are diseases that can be spread by pathogens. So let's pick up on two different parts of this definition. First of all, pathogens. A pathogen is a microorganism that causes disease. Viruses, bacteria, fungi, Protist, so the four we're going to focus on. And then spread, what we mean by spread is transmission. So that could be a word that they use, or if a disease is transmissible. And really what we're talking about here is how does it spread from one person to another. It could be direct contact, so touch. It could be water. It could be airborne. It could be blood. It could be bites, lots of different ways. It could be sexual transfer, okay? And the final thing then just to focus on here is how does it actually cause disease? So what do the pathogens do to actually make you feel ill? Well, they do it in different ways. So bacteria release toxins, and it's these toxins cause the damage. Viruses do not release toxins. They invade cells. They reproduce inside the cells. They alter the host DNA and they cause cell damage. So, 4 types: viral diseases, bacterial diseases, fungal diseases, and diseases caused by protists. So we're going to focus on viral diseases. For each section, we're going to talk about the disease, the effect it has, and potential treatment. Okay, and just some key things that we can talk about linked to it. So the first one then is measles. Okay, measles manifests itself as a fever, and a red rash. It is spread in the air, so kind of droplet infections. It can lead to a cough as well. In terms of treatment, you can get antiviral drugs, but the best is prevention, and that is a vaccine. So most people should have heard of the MMR jab, which is measles, mumps and rubella. So the aim really to reduce the spread of measles is to have a vaccination program. That vaccination program, whether you're involved in it or not, will lead to herd immunity. So if numbers of measles often increase, it's often due to people not taking up the vaccination program. Second one then is HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus. So human immunodeficiency virus can lead to a very severe flu that can then lead to AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, and that is a complete really breakdown of the immune system. In particular, you have far less white blood cells, and you're more prone to secondary infections. Nobody's actually ever died of AIDS. They die of the secondary infection, so something like pneumonia is actually what kills them. It's spread two ways. So it can either be spread by sexual contact, or it can be spread by needles. In terms of the treatment then, these are antiretroviral drugs. There is no vaccination for it, mainly because the disease is far worse. The risk of getting disease is far worse than actually the likelihood of getting disease. And the final one is tobacco mosaic virus. Tobacco is a type of plant. In particular, we could be talking about tomato plants. If this is my tomato leaf, what happens then is you get kind of a mosaic pattern of black, so these black spots. And if there are black, it means there is less chlorophyll, which means less light is absorbed, which means there is less photosynthesis. In terms of treatment for that, you would just remove those leaves, those discoloured leaves. Bacterial disease then, two main bacterial diseases. So first one is Salmonella, which leads to quite severe food poisoning. Symptoms are D&V, which is diarrhea and vomiting, often linked to lack of hygiene or unhygienic conditions, particularly with poultry or chickens, etc. It can lead to fevers as well, because the Salmonella releases a toxin. That is what makes it particularly bad for you. Salmonella is a bacterial disease, so we can treat it with antibiotics. But because it's linked to poor hygiene, this can be linked to cooking your food properly and making sure you wash your hands properly. Next one then is gonorrhea, which is a sexually transmitted disease. The key symptom really is a yellow discharge and pain when urinating. Again, because it is a bacterial disease and we can only use antibiotics against bacterial diseases, this can be treated with a bacteria, but prevention better than cause. condom to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. Fungal disease, the only fungal disease you need to be aware of is rose black spot. Again, similar to what we've spoken about already, if these are my leaves of my rose, lots of black spots appear on it, then the key for this then is, again, because of the black spots, less chlorophyll, less light is absorbed, which means they have less photosynthesis, which ultimately means they have less glucose, and then you can have less energy released by respiration, or less ability to make amino acids or grow. So it just depends upon the length of the question in terms of what they want to answer for that. If it's a 6-mark question, explain the effect of rose black spot or tobacco mosaic virus, this is what I would be saying. Any question then, so this is where you could get an application question, any question that talks about the treatment of a fungal disease, whether it's rose black spot or thrush, athlete's foot or anything, very simply, a fungicide. Fungicide can be sprayed on it to kill those. So fungicides are very useful in that respect. The final one then is Protist disease. The only Protist disease you need to be aware of is malaria. The disease is actually spread by a protist. A protist is a single-celled organism. It kind of has a mixture of prokaryote and eukaryote characteristics. It does have a nucleus, which means it is a eukaryote, but you'd probably look at it and think it looks more like a prokaryote. Some protists as well also have chloroplast. This one doesn't, but some of them do. Malaria in particular is spread by a Plasmodium protist, which is a type of parasite. But it's not the parasite. That actually infects a mosquito. The mosquito will then bite a human, and they will inject the Plasmodium parasite into it. So the mosquito in this case is acting as a vector, because it's transferring the Plasmodium virus from where it was before, so it could be the water, and into that. In terms of the effect it has on you, malaria can be fatal. It leads to very severe fevers, so it can be fatal if not treated. In terms of prevention, you want to try and stop the vector. So you can have mosquito nets. You could have mosquito spray. Thinking higher level, we are thinking of genetically modifying mosquitoes to prevent their reproduction so they don't spread it. And ultimately you want to stop them from yourself being bitten. You want to stop that life cycle. Equally, the mosquitoes live in stagnant water, so also removal of stagnant water is a very important way to do that. So that's kind of a very quick overview really of all the diseases. There are barriers to your immune system which prevent the entry. So a barrier is preventing the entry, and the skin is the best example of that. Hydrochloric acid is a very good example of that, and cilia and mucus together are an example of that. But ultimately, you want to focus on your white blood cells in terms of prevention. Your white blood cells, we have phagocytes, which are a type of white blood cell. They engulf. So if this is my pathogen, my phagocyte will engulf it. This process is called phagocytosis. And then the phagocyte will have lots and lots of enzymes, which will then break down and destroy my pathogen. Another type of white blood cell then is a lymphocyte. and they work in two ways. So one type of lymphocyte produces antitoxins, and their job is to neutralise the bacterial toxins. But probably the best form of immune system is these antibodies. Every pathogen has got a little thing on their cell membrane called an antigen. What an antibody does is it binds to these antigens. What we say is they are complementary, which is another way of saying specific, to an antigen. That then stops either the antigen from invading a cell, or stops them reproducing, or stops them from causing that cell damage. Okay, so as per usual then, once you've done your knowledge, there's some past paper questions. So this is a question which talks about symptoms. And then again, vaccination, which we've not spoken about a huge amount, but vaccination really is talking about your antibodies and your memory cells. So pause that and answer the question. And here's the mark scheme. So you can see about lymphocytes, antigens, complementary. This talks about protist then, so you can see it's a single-celled organism, but the key difference is we've got this nucleus, we've got this mitochondria, we've got ribosomes which are the same, and the question down here says 3 ways the structure is different from a prokaryotic cell, even though it's a single-celled organism. And here's the mark scheme, so you can see here mitochondria, nucleus, the absence of a plasmid, the absence of a cell wall, the absence of a single loop. How do they cause illness, those viruses? And then a bit of kind of a question here of why did they not show symptoms? There's your answer. Thank you.